This is Kurtis with a K. Today I'm going to be speaking with Pam Roberts. She is an expert working with children. Pam, why did you become a teacher?
Kurtis, I think people become the greatest teachers when they themselves are really excited about learning. And I think back when I was 4 years old, my sister one summer when we were all bored and had nothing to do decided to play school. And in the first day of us playing school, she taught me at the age of 4 how to write my name. I was so excited about that. I thought I had been let into an exclusive learning club that I knew how to write my name. And that excitement and love for learning continued when I started public school. I was a very talkative child. I'm sure I drove my teachers crazy, and so one of the ways that they dealt with that difficulty of having me in the classroom and having such high energy is they would send me down to work with the younger children. And by the time I was 11, I was studying cello, and I felt sorry that some of the other kids didn't get private lessons like I did, and I started teaching them after school. So learning and teaching has just been a central part of my life, and it just makes total sense that I eventually became a professional teacher. I started playing professionally with orchestras at the age of 13, so it really was a phenomenal part of my life. I practiced 7 hours a day. You know, it was just something that you devoted yourself to. And the unfortunate thing when I was in my late 20s is I was injured in a car wreck. And so I had to retrain. And I had to go through all of that soul searching that a person goes through in a moment like that in their lives where they're figuring out, what am I supposed to do now? And I remember I would look at the Sunday Times, the Seattle Times, and look at all the classifieds and look at all of the jobs and try to get ideas. And it struck me that, you know what, I've been teaching my whole life. I always had at least 10 to 15 cello students at all times. And I thought, you know, I really love it. I love teaching. So I went back to school and got a teaching certificate and, you know, entered a new career. And I love to tell that story to young people because sometimes we put all of our eggs in one basket and we think, oh, that's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a musician or I'm going to be an athlete or whatever it is. And that's where your education is so important. You really need to get a full, rounded education so you can do other things as well.
If you like teaching so much, why did you start to become a principal?
You know, I've been very proud of the achievements that I had as a teacher, and I reached so many young people through my teaching career. But it was very exciting to become an administrator as well because I could really coach directly and help other teachers see the power of inclusive education and that they really can serve all kids in their classrooms without pulling them out and sending them off to special education classrooms and such. There's damage done. You know, when kids are pulled out of classrooms. There is a message sent when that happens that you don't belong, your needs really don't belong here, and that there must be somebody else out there, somewhere else, who is better going to serve you than your teacher. And that isn't only for kids with learning challenges, that's also frequently for gifted children who need to be challenged. I remember one very gifted boy that I served, and it was just phenomenal teaching him, but I have to say it was challenging for me. I had to plan, you know, for him. He couldn't just sail through what everybody else was doing because he was going to digest that and more. And I remember this one time, and this is way before the internet became something that we used a lot, but he was on the internet, and this would have been back in the early 80s, I think. And he found a professor on the East Coast involved in something he was researching, and he asked me if he could contact this professor. And sure enough, he got an email contact with this professor, and the guy started mentoring him from a distance. That was eye-opening for me, and so there's an example. If I had just farmed him out and insisted that somebody else meet his needs as a gifted learner, I wouldn't have learned something in terms of potential mentorships and experiences that I could bring to other kids.
So Pam, what motivated you to become an inclusive teacher?
When I started my training in education, I was a beginning teacher at the Montlake Elementary School in Seattle, and the principal there was incredible. I mean, her name was LaVon Dennett, and she was a visionary. And the biggest thing that LaVon stood for was inclusive education. She really believed that school was a community and that everybody should be embraced, all of their needs. They should be looked at as individuals and not labeled. So, labeling a child special education or severely behaviorally disordered or all that, I mean, she really didn't like that and refused to do it. And it was really instrumental for me to be a beginning teacher and to watch her and learn from her.
In your entire career, what is your greatest achievement?
The thing that I am most proud of in my career is my consistent commitment to inclusive education. And it doesn't matter what I've been involved in, I have embraced the needs and the participation of every variety of learner, and it doesn't matter what their challenges are, if it's behavioral challenges or learning challenges or physical challenges, whatever it is.
Describe an inclusive lesson.
Let me tell you a story about a student who I had in my class, and she had profound learning challenges. It was very, very hard for her to learn. And yet, this one class, and these were 6th grade students, we were doing a history project. And in this project, it was an inquiry-based project where the kids were exploring different countries, and they were going to ask some very simple questions like, is this a fun country? Is it a fair country? And do some research around that. And at the same time as I was structuring this experience for the class, I knew this was going to be beyond her abilities. And yet, she had a love of animals, and she had a skill that she really needed to practice, which was the ability to transfer information, say to read a passage in a book and be able to write that passage on another piece of paper. So she really needed to practice transferring information. So her project, at the same time as the other kids were working on their history project, her project was to take the dictionary, to find an animal for each letter of the dictionary and to transfer the entry from the dictionary onto her journal. And when she was done with all the transferring of the text, to add some pictures and some drawings. And, she was very, very excited about her project. And we would all work at the same time. But the climate, the positive climate that was created by having her there, and she was such a loving and warm, affectionate and encouraging student, and she encouraged the other students on their project, and of course they reciprocated and they encouraged her on her project. And so that's the best example I can describe to you of an inclusive classroom where everybody belongs and everybody's needs are met within that classroom. Now, at the same time as I talk about an inclusive classroom and meeting everybody's needs within that classroom, or whatever experience, it doesn't have to be a classroom, it can be an after-school program or a club, you don't want to create a new box to shove people into. And I'll give you an example. When I was a public school teacher, one year I had a child with autism in my class, and I really worked hard with his special education teacher and with his parents and myself to be really consistent. We had a behavior plan for him, and everybody was on, consistent basis guiding him. And it was just an ideal situation as far as the team. But despite all of our best efforts, when we would get to the last hour of the day, he really was kind of burned out. And that larger classroom environment was no longer appropriate for him. He just needed to go into a smaller, quieter space. And that was okay, But the goal is, when you're an inclusive educator, is to include everybody to the maximum that you can. And that they can, and to strive for that.
Thank you, Pam, for your thoughts about inclusive education. This is Kurtis with a K, signing off. See you next time.